which is a green bank, a nonprofit green bank serving the state of Indiana. I will explain what that means momentarily. And I will now pass it to Donna.
Yeah, I have a mortal fear of feedback. So yeah, thank you. Is that better? There is a buzzing. I hear it. I'm Donna Sink. I am with IFF. There's swag on your tables from IFF. The little red thing is a sticker you can put on the back of your phone, and then you can stick your like business cards or driver's license or something in it. Please take the swag so I don't have to take it back to Indianapolis with me. IFF is a CDFI, Community Development Financial Institution. We are about 30-ish years, 35 years old. We are headquartered in Chicago. We have about 140 employees spread across the Midwest, and we serve 9 Midwestern states, 10. And we do both. Well, we do many things, which I'll talk a little more about, but we do lending for nonprofits, and I am in the real estate consulting arm of the organization, and we only work with nonprofits. And we have done some work in the energy efficiency area for nonprofits, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. And I'm going to hand it over.
Good morning. My name is Diana McKeown. I co-direct a partnership called the Clean Energy Resource Teams, or CERTs, in the state of Minnesota. And it's a partnership. And so I am based at one of the 4 partners, which is the Great Plains Institute. And Great Plains is a 28-year-old clean energy nonprofit based in Minneapolis with deep, deep roots in Minnesota and regionally. But we are a national organization with over 80 employees across 25 plus states. I'm here with my colleague, Catherine, and I'm going to pass it to her.
Thank you. I love when someone else gets to do the GPI spiel, so I don't need to. But hi, everyone. I'm Catherine Kemp. Great to meet you all. I'm a program manager at the Great Plains Institute. Work a lot with local governments in Minnesota and in other states, supporting action on climate and clean energy. I'm happy to be here.
All right. So first, what we're going to talk about broadly, there's a description in the whatever the app, but let me sort of tell you how it all fits together. So I'm going to talk about. I'm going to start actually. It's not on the slides, but about sort of federal overview, but really talk about green banks, how we fit into the ecosystem, and we are one financing option for clean energy that exists in every state that you all represent, I'm sure, and we'll do a little survey. But we operate in collaboration with CDFIs, other lenders. So I'll kind of explain that a little bit. And then Donna, as representing the CDFI world, can talk about how that fits in, right? And you'll start to understand how different mission-oriented organizations like the ones we represent, and each of your states, again, has correlating ones. So you can understand that. And then the third part of it will be how you make this all work in a real example in Minnesota. So how all of the various organizations that exist in a given geography can collaborate together and do collaborate together. And so we'll have some case studies about that. So that's basically what you're in for. Again, we're locking the door. So if that's not what you wanted, too bad. We will take a minute here, though, maybe to do a quick survey of sectoral representation and and we'll just call it out, maybe show of hands, and then we'll do a little open mic just to get a feel for how people are, where your mindset is before we jump into the presentation itself. So I'm going to try to knock off each sector here and jump in, right? So why don't we start with local government? Who's from local government? Okay, that's good. Corporate? Good. Kind of.
I'm kind of corporate.
Nonprofits? Students? Yeah. Yeah. And universities? Students at heart? What have I forgotten? State government? Yeah, right?
Federal. So that's kind of what we wanted to do with taking the temperature, is talk about what's going on right now. So yeah.
you and all of us, maybe just to kind of talk about like, what are you thinking right now, right? There's a lot of craziness going on. Where's your mindset? Who feels bold to go first? Talk about like challenges that you've run into, concerns you might have, questions you might have that we can answer during the course of the presentation. Why don't we start? Put your hand.
Also, I should let you guys know I can't see very well, so like no little shy hands. Like if you want to say something, be proud.
Hi, my name is Shonali Palacios. I work for the Environmental Protection Network. So we're a nonprofit organization, and a lot of the focus of our work, although I will say it's not all of what we do, over the past few years has been to help CBOs we work with, and even, like city governments access IRA funding. Um, Now, as you all probably know, that funding is majorly either gone or in jeopardy of being gone in a lot of places through a lot of programs that we have been working for the last year to get people to apply to. So on a personal level, it's difficult. But right now we're kind of seeing a lot of our communities, not want to apply to federal funding anymore, understandably. And also the opportunities aren't really necessarily there for them anymore. So we're really trying to look for alternate ways for all of these groups who have these great ideas to fund their projects. And yeah, that's part of the reason we're here today.
Thank you. Anyone else?
So I'm Eric from the city of Milwaukee. I'll echo those comments. We have been on an emotional roller coaster with our funding. As I'll talk about in our 11 o'clock presentation, we had funding for all of every single one of our climate priorities in the climate plan. Now all of last year was getting the money, and now it's all in jeopardy. So we're trying to defend it as best we can. But I'm feeling resilient. I feel like we got through that first shock period of what's going on, and now that we're all in this room, we got to buck up and figure out how we're gonna find a way to move forward.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, yep.
Thank you. Hi, Amber Greeny from Caramita. So right now I'm hit with kind of a surprise because yesterday the federal government decided to move forward with an energy grant that funds LIDAC nonprofit energy efficiency work, which is super exciting. So it's going to take place on the East Coast. And that counters my other point, which is we're working on 4 big CPRG climate pollution reduction grants right now for municipal statistical areas. And we have decided to put the funding analysis on hold because ultimately we're looking to find funding for all of the actions within those CPRG projects. But given the turbidity of the Inflation Reduction Act, we've decided to hold off a few months until we can get some more answers.
Thank you. Anyone else? Missed. Oh, yep.
Yeah, my name is Katie. I work with the Clean Energy Community Initiative at the University of Wisconsin, and I'm probably just going to echo a lot of what other people said, but I work a lot with researchers in the College of Engineering, and I think one of the things that I'm challenged with is how do we hold space with people who are naturally very anxious and angry while still, cultivating action and, ways that we can pivot our strategy now that a lot of their federal funding and our federal funding is gone. I think that's what I'm really interested in hearing about too.
All righty. Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name is Shannon Anderson. I'm from the state of Indiana. We are, I know, Alex knows what I'm about to say, which is that our state was part of the CPRG program. We submitted a PCAP. We're on track, I think, to submit a CCAP in September, but obviously that's going to be difficult because it was unfunded. We did not receive any additional funds to implement that CCAP, which I think everybody was hoping for. But also, our governor has issued an executive order that the state should not engage in any climate action planning and banning the social cost of carbon, among other things. So I think that, Alex and I know we've both really tried to find ways around that. And my organization, Earth Charter Indiana, works a lot on the local level, as does this wonderful person behind me, who's at Indiana University, to try to find local solutions and kind of workarounds when your state is like obstinate about doing the kind of work that we know needs to get done, and find those funding solutions for local projects to kind of keep moving forward.
Thank you. It looks like we got a young generation in here too. Anybody else have anything they would like to add to the conversation? Oh, yes.
I would love to hear if others are thinking about the implications of tariffs as we're, all thinking about our solar projects, and the cost today is not going to be the cost tomorrow. I've got a grant that we had been awarded right before the change in administration, and we'd submitted a BABA waiver, and now radio silence. Like, are we going to get the money? Are they even reviewing those applications anymore? So just thinking a lot about domestic sourcing.
All righty, thank you. And then I think we'll take one more comment. Oh, okay, perfect.
There's a lot of interest in investors seem to be interested in investing in renewable energy, and I'm wondering on how to capitalize on that energy for these community-oriented projects, ones that are really impactful, but maybe don't make them gazillions of dollars. How do we influence them that impact is as valuable as tangible money?
Thank you very much. And then I'll give it back to the speakers.
So actually, that's. You hear me? Yep.
Is this? Okay. Sorry, you guys.
Should we flip flop? Is that one not buzzing? All right. That's a perfect lead in the private capital into green banking. So before I jump into that, for all of you, I don't know where you are in terms of tracking all of the federal funding, but I'll just do a very quick overview of where things stand. It might help in terms of some of the details that we get into. As you know, the Inflation Reduction Act had 3 components under the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. So the NCIF, CCIA, and Solar for All buckets. It also has other things going on, tax credit enhancement programs like direct pay. And I'm going to talk about that. I'm sure you're aware of it, but I swore to myself I would never talk in public without talking about direct pay. So, a lot of that is currently in weird flux, right? Now, Solar for All seems to be kind of moving ahead. Solar for All, just to remind you, is a $7 billion, I think, program that is focused exclusively on residential low-income solar, and states and coalitions of nonprofits, and I think in some cases cities applied for and received allocations. Now that money sits up at the federal government and is a reimbursement. It's a drawdown function, right? So there's always a question moving forward whether that continues, but for the time being, it appears to be continuing, and that's great because that's a really critical funding need in everybody's community in terms of allowing people who have low income households to be able to really participate in what people with higher income households have been able to do, which is to reduce their energy costs. So that is one bucket, Solar for All. And it's a little different than the other 2 components of the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. The other 2 components, one is called the National Clean Improvement Fund, and the other one is the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, I think, CCIA and CIF. Those 2 are similar to each other in that the federal government was giving money down to national nonprofits, and those funding that funding would then go into geography. So at the national level, they would be then moving the funding down. Now, how they did that was very different in those 2 programs. So in one case, which is the National Clean Investment Fund, the nonprofits received money and they were going to make direct investments. So the idea behind that was to be able to really make investments that were cross state geographies, right? So regional and even national investments. So an example might be if you if Target wanted, I'm making this up, wanted to put solar across all of their stores across the country, well, it'd be really annoying for Target to have to deal with every single locality to try to get funding support to be able to do it. So if you had a national player that could do it, That was the idea, right? They could also create programs that were like heat pump programs that were nationally oriented. So it's just a way to kind of break the problem, or anticipate breaking the problem of multiple geographies, having different funding sources and all the complication. The other group, which is the CCIA group, that was just a pass through. So the idea behind that, the money came from the federal government to the national nonprofits, and they were going to turn around and basically pass that money down to their constituents in each geography. So an example of that is OFN, which is the national organization for the CDFI world, was going to take that funding that they received and immediately disperse it to the CDFI level groups at each geography, right? Another example is Inclusive, which is actually currently having another conference somewhere. They represent credit unions all over the country. And so they were going to receive funding, and that funding was then immediately going to turn around, and they were going to kind of pass it down to credit unions in geographies to be able to make lending available at the geographic level. So the two programs, NCIF, CCIA, sort of the same, but very different in how that funding was going to make its way down. Does that make sense? The problem is that when the federal government, when the EPA took the money that they were going to give to the NCIF and CCIA recipients, they moved it into Citibank accounts. And then the Citibank accounts were going to be where the funding stood. And that was very normal, despite what certain people whose names start with Z say, that the fund, it was very normal for that funding to be put into that kind of structure because it would make it a lot easier to draw down and to access from the Citibank account, right? A lot easier than trying to get money out of the, whatever, the treasury, right? So when all of this chaos started, they went in and they decided to freeze the funding at Citibank. Okay, so the Citibank accounts that received all of this funding are frozen, and that's what you're reading about in the news, right? And it's kind of complicated. They tried to the new EPA tried to terminate the agreements. That's still being worked out, but the money is frozen right now. So in a lot of cases, there's a lot of confusion. Nobody's sure what's going to happen here, right? And that's what's happening right now out in the market. Now, that's not always the case. Certain funding actually made it out of that. And so there are a number of green banks who have received funding, right? So we're in a different position than other green banks that have not received funding, or other organizations that have not received funding. So you have a kind of a mixed scenario, but as I'll describe, even though we have received some funding, because of this chaos, we're not sure what to do with it yet. We're not sure if we want to go to market with this funding, because it has a real risk of being clawed back. So it's messed up right now, right? Having said that, as the gentleman from Milwaukee was saying, we got to just kind of figure this out. And I would say if you come away from at least my portion of the talk, and all of us, number one, remember that the federal funding was not the end game. Okay, the federal funding was just the beginning, and it was never going to be. I mean, even $27 billion is like a drop in a bucket, relative to the need out there. So it was always meant to stimulate the market, as you were saying at the table, for private investment, right? So remember that, because it can get a little depressing when you're like, oh my gosh, we had all of our climate actions funded from federal funding, and now that's in jeopardy. The game was never just to stop there. The game was always to transform the markets using this federal funding, and so we just have to be creative about it, right? We have to, hopefully this thing plays out and we get what we thought was going to happen. But if it doesn't, we just have to be creative. And there's a lot of pent-up private capital out there that is interested in doing this work. We just have to be creative about how we go about doing it. Okay, so that's one takeaway. Remember that. And the other is, if you're sitting there, or if you know people who have sort of half-baked ideas and not sure even who to ask about, is this idea even viable, whatever, it doesn't matter who you ask. You can ask CDFIs, you can ask green banks, and I'll put a chart up. You can see your green bank, your relative green bank. You can ask. A lot of our organizations are talking to each other all the time in the background, especially these days. And so, part of the exercise today is to tell you about what we do, but it's also, if you're a nonprofit, is so that you can also be part of that discussion. And so if you go to, if you have this idea of like, oh, I think I want to do this thing, I don't know who to turn to. It doesn't matter. just remember, it doesn't matter who you turn to ask, as long as they're, is sort of talking to other nonprofits, because they either will know or be able to connect you with the right players. So if you come to your green bank, the green bank may not be able to help you in certain instances, but we know who can, and we'll direct you in that direction. Okay. So don't wait too long if you have ideas. Don't worry about not knowing who to ask. Just ask anyone, and they'll probably be able to redirect you. And remember that the federal funding was only in the start. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get into this a little bit. So again, Alex Crowley, Indiana Energy Independence Fund. We are a nonprofit green bank. I'm going to try to do this. We're not in the sync. So let me start with an explanation of what green banks are, if you don't know it. So, to this last question that you were asking, fundamentally, a green bank is a terrible name for this because it's not a bank. And in a place like Indiana, we don't like to use the word green. But we're a green bank. It's a term of art. And there's a green bank really in every state in the country. At least there are in some cases multiple green banks in certain states. But basically, the idea behind a green bank is that we take funding from a variety of sources: philanthropic funding, private funding, public, local, public state, in some cases, federal funding. And we use that money really to facilitate private investment in domestic low carbon, climate resilient infrastructure. Okay, so we are using the money that we get, and we are pairing it and using it to really stimulate private investment, which, as I said earlier, was always the long game. And our role is to de-risk on that private capital so that they can feel comfortable entering the market and doing things that they might not feel comfortable doing. So if you are a credit union somewhere and you kind of want to do clean energy financing because it's actually a really good business, but you don't know how to do it, you don't have contractors who are lined up, you're worried about the risk associated with it because you don't understand the market very well, we can come in as a green bank and we can kind of put things in place that allow you as a credit union to go out and do that financing, and we can take the risk off your plate. So, if you're worried about loans defaulting, well, we can put money in place to say if they default, we'll cover that, right? And that just stimulates private capital. It's a great use of public funding because we're using a very relatively small amount of money to unleash a relatively large amount of money, and that's the whole game that green banks play. So we are fundamentally trying to lower energy costs for underserved communities, and that is low and moderate income households with undercapitalized organizations like nonprofits, and undercapitalized governments, school systems, churches, just a variety of different sectors, businesses, for-profit businesses. We can do all of that. We because we are a nonprofit, we're not motivated by maximizing our returns, right? In fact, all we're trying to do is look at a marketplace and say, where's the financing market working well? And if it's working well, great. We don't need to be part of that. We're not competing with that in any way. Where is it not working well? So if you are a low income household, chances are you can't get a loan, right? And if you can, the interest rate that you're going to be charged is going to be so ridiculous that functionally it doesn't even matter to you, right? It doesn't count. So, a green bank can come in and can provide manageable interest rate financing for that household. And by manageable, it means low because that household's not going to be able to take on a lot of debt. So we can come in because that's our mission. Our mission is to fill that gap and let that household accomplish a clean energy, renewable energy project, or a nonprofit, or a church, et cetera. Does that make sense? So focus, again, the focus primarily is on underserved communities. And what we want to do is, help them. They are, I think all of us understand this. The clean energy world has been, increasing. The momentums have been increasing. But really, when you peel it back, unfortunately, a huge swath of the population is being left out, right? And those people who are being left out are precisely the people who need the most help, right? Because they're the ones who are taking it on the chin of, they live in communities that have historic underserved, and contamination and all of that stuff, right? So those households, those organizations, those communities who are most in need are the ones who are not getting it. And so, what we do at Green Banks, we say, all right, let's focus on that. And that could be rural, it can be urban. It's across the state of Indiana as far as we're concerned, and every green bank is doing basically the same thing. And what we want to do is essentially get them out of this vicious cycle of energy burden that they're living in, where they are paying a disproportionately high amount of money of their income on energy costs, and can't snap out of it because they don't have the financial tools to be able to create a solution for themselves to get themselves out of that cycle. So they're just in this vicious cycle. That's what we're trying to help fix. So the Indiana Energy Independence Fund, I like to break that word down into 4 words, right? Indiana, hopefully pretty obvious. But what's interesting about the name is, Indiana, we're focused on energy, right? Energy independence was not an accidental name for a place like Indiana. And the Connecticut Green Bank can call themselves a Connecticut Green Bank. We can't. So the Energy Independence Fund, the Indiana Energy Independence Fund, is very deliberate because it's a complicated regulatory marketplace. It's a complicated political marketplace in Indiana. I know, some of you in like Missouri. I was talking to someone yesterday, and we were trying to one-up each other about whose legislature was most insane. And you're in Kansas. All right. See, like you just call it out a little bit. Everybody's like, oh, mine's the most insane, But anyway, we're in Indiana. Now, look, from my perspective, I often say it's not like we were on a gravy train of like progressive, whatever, right? Like we have been operating in a state environment that it has been challenging for a very long time. So, this kind of chaos that's happening from the federal government is unfortunate because, we have very interesting local governments doing really interesting local things. We always had at least in recent memory, a somewhat complicated state level, problem, but we had the federal level above that, right? So we could kind of like circumvent the state. We had this federal. Now we don't. So we're kind of like, all right, we're local, right? Let's play the local game because that's the game that we can play. Now, I should say there are really great people working at the state, in the energy office, in certain. So I don't want to write off the entire state. I think the legislature is a little complicated, but I think they're really great people at the state level, and we collaborate with them. So, Indiana is one of those areas, and I know others of you have the same challenges. We were established in 2023, so we're not that old. We were launched with philanthropic funding from across the Midwest. And the pitch, frankly, that I make all the time is, hey, if Indiana can do it, the Midwest can do it. And if the Midwest can do it, anybody can do it, right? So that's actually a really good fundraising pitch, but don't steal it. But anyway, we get philanthropic support because we have a very particular problem. And if we can fix that in Indiana and Kansas and other places, then I think, that if we can all do it, then we got a playbook that we can play. We serve statewide, again, rural and urban. We were launched, as many green banks were launched, really to take advantage of federal funding that was being teed up. And obviously it's gotten a little complicated. We're in the nonprofit model, and that's just important to understand that certain green banks are started by their state governments and can be an agency of the state or a quasi-governmental agency that is funded by and supported by the state. In a place like Indiana, that was not going to happen. So the third model, and you'll see this particularly in complicated regulatory or legislative states, is a nonprofit model that has no formal relationship with state government. And that allows us to be pretty independent, right? Which is great. It also, it's a double-edged sword. We don't get necessarily the funding that certain state-funded green banks get from the state, but that's okay. So you kind of have to figure out, which model makes the most sense. And we've launched, and so we've been at it here for about a year and a half. Again, eligible projects. Oh, sorry. There you go. HVAC upgrades, energy audits, lighting, renewables, insulation, energy efficiency improvements. All of those are kind of building oriented. We also get involved in transportation. EV infrastructure financing. These are all the kinds of things that we. So if you are trying to put a, as I like to joke, a new swimming pool in your backyard, I wouldn't turn to your green bank for financing for that. You're gonna have to go to someone else. But there's solar heat pumps that could warm your pool. Maybe that would be. But anyway, this is the kind of eligible projects that we deal in. And as I mentioned before, there's an ecosystem out there in each of your geographies. We are part of it. Green banks are part of it. You have CDFIs, right? You have credit unions, you have banks, you have the public sector, utilities. I actually should list nonprofits. Those should be part of this ecosystem. But basically, these are all the kind of clean energy financing options that are out there in the market. And the way that I would think about it is banks are the most conservative often, right? Then right as part of that, you have like community banks are a little bit more risk tolerant. Then you have CDFIs that are even more risk tolerant. Or I should say credit unions probably are next, right? So if you think of this as an expanding circle of risk tolerance, then CDFIs on the outside, and Donna will talk about that. And then public sector can be pretty risk tolerant. Green banks are the Wild West of risk tolerance. We're a little nuts. Utilities also have programs that have clean energy financing, and they're probably in there in the kind of middle zone. So there are a lot of options out there, and it's just a matter of like leveraging the different options that are available, and we can get into that. We're doing a little breakout at the end. So your friendly local green banks. Here's where they are. Here's who they are. So if you, as I said earlier, if you need an answer, if you don't know where to turn, you can always turn to your green bank, because the job that I've been doing since I joined about 18 months ago, schlepping around the state of Indiana, talking to everybody who will listen to me, I know pretty well what's what organizations are out there and what they're doing and what they're focused on, what their lanes are and are not. My colleagues at all of these different green banks, they're doing the same thing, and so you should feel free to just reach out to them. And if you need their contact information, just ping me. I have it. I didn't want to necessarily project it without their permission, but these are the players. And the green bank industry collaborates very, very closely. I'm literally on 3 calls a week with green banks. And we had dinner last night in Indiana group, and the guy sitting next to me was a green bank from Wisconsin, right? And so, they're out there. We all talk to each other, so we're learning from each other, and we're also able to tell you what's happening in each of our different geographies. As I said, I never present without talking about direct pay. Direct pay. Now, you may not be totally familiar with this, but if you are, bear with me. Direct pay is a tax credit that has already existed for a long time, which is a tax credit that allows you to offset some of the cost of a renewable installation, among others. And you, as a nonprofit, whether you were a government or a nonprofit, or even a small business that didn't have a tax liability, when you think about it, tax credit's only good if you have a tax liability, right? If you don't have a tax liability, the tax credit doesn't do you any good. So what the IRA introduced was the idea of basically monetizing the tax credit that you would have received had you been a tax eligible entity. So if you had $100,000 solar array going in and you were private industry, you could have taken 30% of that and received it as a tax credit, 30%, $30,000 on the $100,000 solar installation. As a nonprofit, you had to do one of two things. One, forego it, or you had to work with a third party private company that would have to acquire it. I mean, it was complicated. Almost nobody was doing it. With the direct pay, basically that $30,000, which even can be 40 or 50 or 60. I mean, it depends. But certainly the value of the tax credit can be received, bless you, as a credit, as a monetary cash payment back to you, right? So if you had $100,000 solar array, $30,000, we'll just say, you would apply in advance, get that back in cash. Now, there's a little problem with that. You had to get your solar array up. You have to get it up in order to prove and apply for the tax credit. So there's a little bridging problem, which green banks can help with. But bottom line is it now opened up and simplified the process for a lot of nonprofits that otherwise were not pursuing those. That makes sense? So if you have not researched direct pay, research direct pay. If you have not used it but think might be valuable, use it. It's not clear what's going to happen with tax credits. I think what I've heard, and don't hold me to this, is it sounds like the overall tax credit structure may stick around. It may get shortened, but it may stick around. But the reconciliation process that's going on right now might be putting direct pay at risk, and this thing called transferability. Those are the two things I think could get affected faster. But it made me think. I was actually thinking about it the other day. I think that a green bank might be in a position. Let's say tax direct pay goes away. Direct pay is about simplicity. It's about not having to have a tremendous amount of sophistication in your financial structures at a local nonprofit. And it made me think, like, if direct pay goes away, I wonder if like a green bank can create a virtual direct pay where we are basically taking on all of the complication and allowing the benefits of direct pay to continue with nonprofits, even if direct pay does not. And we would basically just kind of like protect the nonprofit from all of that complication, which could be an interesting solution. And again, you just have to be nimble in this case. So anyway, but direct pay. Okay. This is a little complicated. I don't know if these get circulated, but this is how this is going to work. So you have, if you look on the left side of the screen, you have, the way that we go about building what's a capital stack for a project is to say, all right, what's the free money that's out there, right? What's the first free money? Rebates, utility rebates, public, state government rebates, those are out there. So take advantage of the free money first. If there are tax credits that you can leverage, take advantage of those, right? So you can start to chop away at your project costs, and then you start to think about, like, what are the financing options if you still have a gap, and green banks can be one part of those, CDFIs, and some others can be part of that. So you just have to kind of take a project, you just have to chop parts off and always start with the free money. And green banks are never going to try to foist their solution on you. We're there in case you need it. If you have a gap, if you can find better solutions, by all means do that. But that's kind of how we go about thinking about the projects. That's my contact information if you want to reach out to me anytime. And I can connect you with your green bank contacts. And that's there we go. Thank you. And thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it.
Yes. Thank you. I'm actually going to stand up because I feel like I've been sitting so much, and I like to be more active when I talk. So thank you, Alex. What button is it? Is it the forward? There we go. Thanks, Alex. Alex and I have presented a couple of times together, and I think one of the key takeaways is that CDFIs and green banks, we are not in it for profit. We are in it to make good solutions for nonprofits and for entities that need the help. So this collaborative nature is absolutely true. It's 100% true. Like, if it's something that we can help with, great. If we can't and we know it's not going to help you, we will say so and try to help you find someone who can help. So I work for IFF. I'm going to talk a little bit more about some energy efficiency projects we have been involved in. When the idea of direct pay came up, the original title for this, when I put it together back before last November, was about how to access the IRA funding. And when we now don't really know how to do it, I sort of, we all swiveled a little to talk about how can we be more resilient? How can we do funding for projects and do projects in a more resilient and flexible way? So IFF is I said a little bit about it before. We are a CDFI. We are headquartered in Chicago. I work out of the Indianapolis office, and we do 4 kind of major buckets. We do lending for nonprofits for capital projects. So lending for buildings for nonprofits. That's kind of the core of what we do. Allowing nonprofits to build, renovate, buy a building so they have a physical asset. We do also real estate consulting around that. So that's the department I'm in. I'm the director of the real estate department in Indiana, and we do a little work in Kentucky. And we work with nonprofits who want to buy a building, renovate a building, build a building that they can rent some space to other nonprofits. We consult with them on, is that a good thing to do? Can you afford to do it? How much debt might you take on? We do operating pro formas for 10 years to make sure they really are not biting off more than they can chew, because we are real estate experts. Nonprofits are experts in their mission. They know what they do best. We are here to help them to do that mission from a building that is warm, dry, safe, accessible. So I'm an architect by training background, and so I go into it with a building mentality. We also have a community development arm that does actual community development for things like affordable housing, affordable accessible housing. And we have a research and data arm that really tries to, the name of it is the Social Impact Accelerator. It's about, is our work making an impact? So we are really using research and data to make sure that we're not just throwing money at things that aren't, making a big impact and making a difference. As I said, we serve the Midwest, headquartered in Chicago. Our mission is to strengthen nonprofits and the communities they serve. This is a picture from a project we did, a birth center in Detroit, and I just love this picture so much. It goes right to the heart of who we are. I'm just going to say it. We stand in our values, and our values are to be an anti-racist, anti-oppressive organization that serves people and organizations that that is who we are, and we stand in those values. So one of those questions is this question of stewardship. Nonprofits have limited amount of capital. How should they spend it? Should they spend it on their utilities to keep the lights on? Or should they spend it going to the people, the animals, the arts and culture, the whatever it is that they serve? That's where those limited funds need to be stewarded to make an impact, not to be paying the light bills, right? So I work together with, meaning IFF, and specifically in Indiana. We work together on two projects now, two programs for the last 5 years, the SEAL program in Bloomington and the EASY program in South Bend. And when we talk about things like, being more resilient, getting those, in a state that isn't big on the word green, we can work with local governments who are big on the word green. So Bloomington and South Bend are both fully in. Both of these programs are operated through the Office of Sustainability. We come in, IFF comes in and does a building energy assessment for a nonprofit in their building. And then we come back with a report of how this nonprofit could specifically benefit the most from a kind of energy efficiency project, whatever it may be. And there is a matching grant from the city in both cases to do that improvement. This in both cities, this funding grew out of ARPA dollars. So with that money essentially dried up now, we'll see where it will be funded from in the future. The general program process is this: the organizations, nonprofits apply. We do a building site and assessment. We give them a report. They get bids from contractors. They get reimbursed, and then the project is complete and they do a ribbon cutting. The really cool part of this is that sort of middle gray that says review of the assessment together. In many cases, we have worked with nonprofits where when we do this report of here's your building and you need more insulation, but also your roof's probably going to need to be replaced in 10 years. These nonprofits have been like, okay, we never thought about our building in that way before, and we can help them work that budgeting into their future budget so that they know that they're going to have to replace an HVAC system in the next 10 years or whatever it may be. In a couple of cases, the nonprofits have said, okay, we're actually going to stand up a facility committee now because we never really thought about our facility like that before. Part of it is we do a little solar analysis using the NREL PV Watts system. We gather their utility bills for the last 2 years, and we give them an estimate. It's a very loose estimate based on the NREL PV Watts of what they could save over the next 10 years if they invest in a solar system. We started with a really strong solar focus because it was right before Indiana got rid of net metering, and we were trying to get as many solar panels out into the world as we could before net metering went away in Indiana, which it did 3 years ago. So I want to talk just briefly about the value of a cohort. And this goes again, and it was Alex's idea to talk about sort of take the temperature of the room. We are all like-minded people that want to see these kinds of good things happen in the world. And having a cohort of nonprofits, which is how we do it in these programs, the nonprofits apply. We have a group of like 10, it varies, but 8 to 10 to 12 nonprofits that are all part of a cohort. And then we do webinars with them. We do continuing education. We do lots of gatherings like this. We have what's called an easy social. You can see on the bottom, that's in the Studebaker Museum. The point is to get everyone together and talking, right? To get some networking. In our case, because we are doing building projects, sharing of contractors is key. If you find a good guy to do your brickwork, you want to share that guy's name, because when you find a contractor who does good work and you can trust, you want to hold them. You want to have them close. And then it also just gives publicity. Like, it's a way to get people networking, make sure all the nonprofits in a medium-sized city sort of know one another and know what you're doing, and to share resources. We've had a couple of cases. Actually, I think it might be into the next slide. No, it isn't. But we have a couple of cases where someone who did the EASY program a couple years ago and got a solar installation came and spoke to another nonprofit's board and said, yeah, this was a win-win for us. So just to dive a little more into each individual, the SEAL program, Solar Energy Efficiency and Lighting, offers up to $10,000 grants to nonprofits. In the last 4 years, we've assisted 25 nonprofits and granted over $300,000. The pictures on the right, this is Amethyst House. It's a transitional housing for men and women. There's 2 separate houses, men and women that are coming out of addiction services. And they have these beautiful historic houses in the one of the historic neighborhoods in Bloomington. The picture on the bottom you can kind of see is this historic house window that's covered in plastic. They have, they have terrible drafts. They had no insulation. And this was in the office of the intake, the intake office. It's the front room of the house. So people would come in from an incredibly traumatic transition in their lives, trying to become more stable, and come into this room that was freezing cold, and the windows looked like bad. The windows looked bad, and it was covered in plastic, and it just doesn't give that feeling of security. So using just a $10,000 grant, they were able to replace several of their windows to be much more energy efficient. They also put in a little mini split system in this office because it was so far removed from the bigger HVAC system that it was always cold anyway. And so they have now this warm, safe, dry, comfortable environment for people coming into a new housing situation to just feel safe. It's a little thing, but a big difference, and saving money on energy. They're not just blowing the heat out the drafted windows every day. The EASY program, Energy Assistance and Solar Savings Initiative, it's a bigger program, offers grants up to $30,000. We have so far assisted 60 nonprofits and granted by the end of 2025, it'll be about $800,000. And this has seeded almost 2.5 million in economic activity. And that is, again, the key thing, especially in a state like Indiana, where they're all about workforce and private investment, to say that our funds help to seed 3 times as much economic activity. That's where this financing can win. The quote down there, the program brought such a wealth of knowledge. It wasn't just about the grant. It was about having that knowledge base, bringing solutions we didn't even know existed. This is, again, nonprofits know their missions. You are the expert in housing women coming out of domestic violence or in whatever. We are the experts in how you can make sure your building is not hindering your ability to serve that mission. This is the one I want to talk about. La Casa de Amistad, Youth and Community Center for Educational, Cultural, and Advocacy for Spanish-speaking neighbors. They used EASY funds to install a solar array, but in our facility assessment, we found that their roof actually needed replacing too. They were able to go to a funder and say, we can get this great deal on a solar array, but we can't afford to also do the roof. So they leveraged a loan from a CDFI, not us, but another one, which is fine because we're all in it together. So they got a loan from the CDFI. They got some funding from the funder that they knew to get their roof replaced. And then they were able to do this solar project. $7,000 in cost savings and 89% decrease in energy consumption in that building because of this solar array. St. Margaret's House, and this is an interesting one, and this is where you need to think creatively. St. Margaret's House is a day center in South Bend for homeless women and children. They have laundry, showers, other services, and they offer a hot lunch every day. So every day, a woman on the streets in South Bend can come here and get a hot lunch. The lower picture is their old freezer system, which was 7 or 8 donated freezers from the 80s that were horribly energy efficient. They're all box freezers, so you had to dig under and everything to get the stuff out of the bottom. They were all labeled because they had so many. They were scattered around and using enormous amounts of energy to keep food cold. With the grant, they were able to install a walk-in cooler. So they've seen 13% decrease in energy. They also have now an organized system where they can operate. And this is a thing I want to say about nonprofits, and this is what IFF believes. Nonprofits, we deserve to not operate from a scarcity mindset. We deserve to operate from a place that we are professionals in what we do, and we deserve to have quality environments to do that mission. St. Margaret's House is an amazing, amazing place. Absolutely beautiful. They have programs for also arts, and they're just wonderful. And so, yeah, that's just that you wouldn't think of that as much of an energy savings project, but it was, and it had all these other benefits. Another one, this one's super close to my house, the Clubhouse of St. Joseph County. It's a day center for adults with significant mental illness. They also installed a solar array. And this is Tess, the director. You can't see her name there, but it's Tess Evans is the executive director. We're saving $500 a month in the heavy season. They had a building that required a lot of air conditioning, so they're now able to pay for that with their solar. $500 a month means 2 or 3 more members being served at the clubhouse. And that's the point. That is the point, to spend the money on the mission, not on the utilities. There's a beautiful video. You can I couldn't figure out how to embed the video. It just seemed like a risk. So there's a beautiful 1.5-minute video of Tess talking about this. So the exciting news is we're launching now in Indianapolis. It's not even official yet, so maybe don't talk about it out of this room. We're launching on May 7th, next week, the Thriving Nonprofits Initiative. This is the same program, the same model, but the city of Indianapolis was not interested in finding the money. IFF found a private philanthropy organization to donate $150,000 to start this project. We are doing it in partnership with the Office of Sustainability of the city, but the city would not bring that funding. So again, going to ideas of how can we be more resilient and more creative in how we bundle together, or how we find money for these projects. My director of the state of Indiana, Amanda Anderson, she's amazing, and she went out and found this money, and we had these 5 years of experience with the previous programs to show how impactful it is. So a little bit about then bundling funding, like as Alex talked about, we have talked about being more resilient, being more creative, and how do you leverage the funds. So there's a little picture there. One of the small businesses in South Bend, again, when we gave that report for of the building, I made a note in it. This wall would be great for a mural. One of the board members came up and said, yeah, we want to do a mural. The South Bend has also a facade improvement grant for small businesses, and a couple of organizations were able to leverage the facade improvement grant to do like hard construction work, and then use the easy dollars to pay for the LED lighting for the outside of the facade. So they combined those grants together. Again, I talked about La Casa already. Studebaker Museum put a big solar array on their roof, and their savings were 15% higher than they expected. So they were able to get funding from another funder to say, look how great we're doing, to help them to fund the LED replacement. So creative thinking about how to bundle the funds, the resources we have available to us, that's what we're going to have to all do. And I think, as Alex said, and I think these guys will talk, Catherine and Diana will talk about, on the local level, you can do more creative kind of bundling of things. That's it for me. That's my boss up there. And I'm going to lead off to Catherine and Diana to talk about bundling.
How long should it take? Good morning. Oh. It's time for me to talk. Apparently the alarm went off. I do. Just had too many things I was carrying. Hi, I'm Diana. I need to forward the slides. Hold on just one second. Yeah. Okay. So we've already introduced ourselves. I didn't touch anything else, I swear to God. Okay. Goes to the machine. So the first two presentations really focused on kind of specific funding, financing, et cetera. And we're going to really talk about how a robust ecosystem of technical assistance providers, nonprofits, state agencies really came together and developed over years and positions us really well right in this moment to really quickly help communities across the state with IRA opportunities, funding, et cetera. So I'm going to really talk about, I'm with CERTS, the Clean Energy Resource Teams. I'll talk about that. Well, I'll go through a couple slides because it helps, I think, understand who we are to understand some of the work that we're doing. I'm going to share about a program that we are collaborating with other organizations. There are a number of organizations that have these like navigator, ambassador kinds of programs because all these things came out from the federal government. And trying to navigate it is really hard because there's so many things. I mean, there were moments in 23, I was like, just stop, please stop. There were so many things coming down the pike. And we have such a collaborative community in Minnesota that is built over, I've been doing it for over 30 years. That's such a beautiful collaboration that we were able to really come together and figure out how do we maneuver on all these different programs and share with each other. So a little bit about CERTS. So CERTS is a statewide partnership with a shared mission. We are very highly collaborative and we're super highly branded. People think we're an organization and it's just not true. I work for the Great Plains Institute. And I'll talk more about the other partners, but we don't do any policy. We are completely focused on community-based clean energy projects. We help communities get started and implement projects, and that includes financing. So these are the four entities. I'm obviously at the Great Plains Institute. I have had actually 2 jobs for the last 2 years. I've been the regional coordinator in the metro region of Minnesota for 18 years in October. But 2 years ago, our statewide director went to the Department of Commerce, who's now actually the assistant commissioner. And we have a triad of co-directors. So I'm a co-director, but about ready to shed my metro region in a couple months. The Minnesota Department of Commerce, that's where our energy, we don't have our own energy agency. So energy sits in the Commerce Department. The Southwest Regional Development Commission, it's a regional development organization, and then our folks at the Regional Sustainable Development Partnership at Extension in Minnesota. So those are our partners. We're 22 years old. We started in 2003. Here's how we work. We really, because we have some state funding and other philanthropy funding, and because of especially the state funding, we can't recommend particular vendors or things like that. So we really are a source of unbiased information and we take that very seriously. And so I think we've become a really trusted brand because we don't weigh towards one or the other. We have small seed grants every other year that help kind of invest some money in communities. And we've given out almost $2 million since 2006. And we do for real work across the state of Minnesota. It's not just an office in Duluth and Rochester and Minneapolis. I have a staff person that lives in Zim, Minnesota. Yeah, you don't know where it is. Mountain Lake, Minnesota, also don't know where that is. It's a good thing because they're in community, for real in community, and that's really important to us. So we have, like I said, we have staff in all the regions. I'm in the metro for another minute. I mean, I still will be there, but somebody else will be doing that job. And then these are the folks across the state that are engaged in community. In addition to staff people across the state of Minnesota, each of these regions has a steering committee of 8 to 15 people in that region that have their finger on the pulse of what's happening. So whether it's an elected official, a utility rep, a farmer, an economic development person, an environmental organization. So we're by far the deepest clean energy entity in the state of Minnesota. Our approach, we are meeting you wherever you're at in your journey. We are agnostic about why you want to do clean energy. If you don't care about climate change and you're doing it just for money, that's your business. We're not evangelists. We're not trying to convince people to do clean energy because there's enough people that want to do it. So we don't need to do that. Always, since before it was a fad, have striven to strive towards inclusive action. We help a whole bunch of entities. And again, we let people define what community is. Is it your block? Is it your city? Is it your county? Is it your church? Is it your school? Whatever that is for you, we don't care. We're just not trying to help individuals because that is not how we're going to get this done. I mean, we do help individuals, but we try to get them to be in community. That sounded bad. We have up-to-date resources. Our website is amazing, constantly updated guides. We were called up by CISA for our IRA information. We put up a website within months of the IRA going out and have kept updating it. I can say all of these things because I have nothing to do with any of it other than I say, maybe we should have a thing like this. And then our communications person, who's amazing, makes it happen. So check it out. And I have QR codes on all this stuff. You can go check out, it's cleanenergyresourceteams.org and look around. So I'm going to talk about two different things. I wanted to give that background about CERTs, but I want to talk about a couple different things. One is the community energy ambassadors. So in the May of 2023, so not quite a year after IRA passed, we were really interested. We put this IRA page up, but we knew that it was going to be hard to navigate. There were so many programs and so many things. And we were getting so many requests to talk to people, audiences about IRA, that we just couldn't handle it. So we designed a program to try to train other folks, give them, resources to talk to their PTA, to their Rotary, to their church, to their school, whatever it is. And so we created this program, and we are, excited about, we've morphed it a couple times. It was originally IRA ambassadors, but because we want to stack all of the incentives, utility, and we have state incentives because we had an unbelievable 2023 state legislative session with a bunch of different programs and funding. So we wanted to make sure people got all of it. So this is the Community Energy Ambassador Program as it was relaunched recently. This is the roadmap. Basically, folks are doing an assessment, training videos, they do a project, and there's community engagement, and that it kind of keeps going. So it's basically 6 different training videos about particular topics. And so they take a pre-survey and then they go through each of these training videos, they do a post-survey, and if they decide to have a project, propose a project, and then they do that project, they become certified ambassadors. We, as Catherine can attest, we like to use our name in any way possible. All of our past staff are certsies. Yeah, we just love it. So certified. So there are 2 paths. At first, when we put out the IRA ambassadors, you could just sign up, to do it, look at some stuff, and you're an ambassador. We now have 2, kind of a bifurcated kind of path. One is self-directed training, which is kind of like it was before. You kind of go on your own time and path, and the videos are somewhere between 10 minutes and an hour, depending on the topic. And we're actually redoing them and making them shorter and more evergreen because, things are changing. And it's really hard to have specifics. And so you can go through that path. There's a second path, a cohort path, that we've launched last year with 4 different organizations across the state that we've given grants to participate in a cohort together, and they're then training their staff and going out and doing it in their specific audiences. We had 2 organizations, 2 Latino organizations, and 2 home buying organizations, Land Trust, and oh my God, I'm forgetting the other one, but first time home buyers kind of situation. So I talked about the training. It's a real broad overview of clean energy topics. We provide slides, scripts, all the things that they need. And we're doing some work on helping with presentation. Not everybody feels comfortable in front of a mic and talking to people, but we've had some of our ambassadors, their project was to host a dinner party for the friends to talk about the incentives. We've had people write a letter to the editor, or, there's just different ways to do things. So a project is basically just trying to get the information out to people in your network. So here's the cohort training. We're really excited. They're working on their projects now. We'll have more information this summer about how those went. Super excited about that, working with them. And, I think with the project and the program, we're trying to really make sure that communities get a voice and that they understand what's happening and how they can really do it. We want to support communities in their clean energy planning and decision making. And we're excited about kind of where this is going. It's really catching on. We just had our first certified ambassador a couple of months ago. And we had an event on Tuesday night and he was there and we pointed him out and got a big round of applause. Oh, and also you get a lapel pin once you're a certified ambassador. It's pretty cool. It's totally worth it. And, we're really trying to help communities. Our tagline when CERTS first started was community determined energy. We are about that folks on the ground determining their own clean energy. And we don't tell them what to do. We want to provide them the information and then they can make a decision on their own. It might not always be what we are thinking, but it's up to them. It's community determined. And so we are working as a collaborative across the state. We have other, like I said earlier, organizations that are navigators and different kind of programs like that. And because we have a really good community in Minnesota, those organizations are meeting with us monthly, and we're talking about how do we, use each other's information and resources and programs instead of recreating our own, each of us creating our own little program. So a bunch of them are actually, directing their people to our ambassador program and how they can go through the training and the videos, but then they're doing other things with them. And so it's really been an opportunity to rely on each other to help build this up. So we are really focused on also having the networks or the ambassadors across the state network with each other. And so we are doing some in-person events regionally. Our state is geographically very large. And so we've done some regional events. We have online Q&As for anybody that can jump on and learn about it. And we have been having coffee chats that are like a little bit more topic focused. So you can come to a coffee chat about electric vehicles or a coffee chat about something else and learn more about that. So we do have an ambassador newsletter. All of our stuff, you're welcome to, sign up, get the information if you'd like, and learn more and talk to us if you're interested in doing something like this in your state. We can't help because we're specifically Minnesota, but we're certainly willing to talk to folks about how we do this. I'm going to switch gears to the Minnesota Technical Assistance Collaborative. This was an effort that started in the fall of 2023. The McKnight Foundation came to CERTS and asked us to help organize bringing TA providers together in the fall of 2023 to talk about how we could support each other and do that work. And so we did that, and then it was pretty successful. We had a bunch of groups come together, and there was definitely a decision that we wanted to keep moving forward. So CERTS was asked to help coordinate this effort going forward. We have an incredible consultant that helps do the doing. Her name is Stacy Grant. She's based in Michigan. Probably some of you know her with Path Consulting. She's unbelievable. So all the pretty things are from her. But we're a network of 50 plus technical assistance providers across the state of Minnesota. And we're really focused on helping support each other and, connect about what's working for you, especially right now. We have monthly meetings that we started, I think, in March of 2024. So over a year, we've been doing these monthly meetings and bringing folks together to really help understand how we can support underserved rural communities, local governments, Indigenous and Indigenous serving, and environmental justice communities. We are all about reducing duplicity. So we provide trainings together. We actually did a training with the Community Energy Network as well. We have an incredible resource hub. And we're really about this any door policy, no matter where an organization, a CBO comes in to look for funding, that we help them navigate and get to the right place. This is a list. It's really small because there are a lot. And it's a whole host of, nonprofits, renewable or regional development organizations, state agencies, counties. I mean, there's just a whole bunch of different kinds of organizations that are participating. And we've just seen an uptick in the last couple of months of folks hopping on the monthly call. And Olivia's here. She's on the call monthly and as always providing great updates from EPN. And it's pretty awesome to be together because it's hard times right now. We provide services all across the energy, project journey, from building capacity and applying for money, and going back towards, to the end of the grant and the tails and the things and reporting that you need to do. So all across that spectrum. And then I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Catherine, so that she can talk about a couple of other things.
All right. So I'm going to try to zoom through this so we have some time for questions. But again, Catherine Kemp with the Great Plains Institute. Diana talked about kind of our statewide network of TA providers that has existed for a long time and has always been quite collaborative, but this latest initiative has made that collaboration even stronger. I'm going to talk about some existing local government networks that have allowed us to mobilize more quickly, to kind of take advantage of new funding opportunities. We've got this existing infrastructure that allowed us to, respond to the opportunities presented by the IRA. And I think these networks will be maybe even more important than ever as the funding landscape has shifted once again. So CERTS and GPI have collaborated for a number of years on a couple of peer learning networks. And I'm going to focus on one today, but just to mention the other two briefly. One's called the Minnesota Cities Climate Coalition. This is a statewide network of city council members and mayors, the local elected officials that are interested in climate. We've got another group that we facilitate of rural regional development organizations, rural economic development entities that do planning and are getting more into the clean energy space. But the one that I'll focus on today is the Community Energy Network. So this is, I used to call them just peer learning networks, but I'm starting to call them peer learning and action networks because we're providing spaces to, share success stories between communities, between local government staff, so they can trade notes on what's working and what's not, commiserate a little bit because sometimes that's what you need to face some of the challenges in local government sustainability work. But the end goal is to encourage others to take action, right? So we have a presentation about how cities are using franchise fees to raise money for climate work. The hope is that other local governments, act on those ideas. The other part of the action part of the network is helping local governments take collective action at the legislature and in the state regulatory sphere. So that's the other part of Community Energy Network. And of course, we're using these to share opportunities that we learn about, whether it's state or federal funding opportunities, resources that are available, that kind of thing. We do quarterly Zoom meetings. We just had our annual in-person meeting on Tuesday, which was super energizing. Sorry to use an energy pun, was not intended, but it was really great to be together. We've got over 130 members representing over 80 local governments and tribal nations across the state. You can see our map here. And we have, a Google group where members can connect in between meetings, ask questions, ask for model RFPs, or ask about some EV charging vendor. It's a great place to share information in between meetings. We also do work groups or cohorts on topics of interest. We've done that over the years. And I'm going to talk about an elective pay. I'm sorry, so you call it direct pay. I'm going to call it both elective pay and direct pay. There was this guy from Treasury who, when he would give presentations about this opportunity, would say, the thing's so nice, they named it twice, but neither name really describes what it is. So anyways, IRS, we can blame it on them maybe. So glad that Alex gave the overview, so I don't have to explain what direct pay is. I can just tell you about our little cohort. So once the IRA passed and kind of the dust has settled and all these national organizations started talking about the opportunity that direct pay provides, some of our members were like, okay, it's a bit complex. It's a new territory for cities that aren't used to filing tax forms. And there were some finance directors that were a bit hesitant, even if the sustainability coordinators, managers were on board. So we responded to our members who are wanting to have a kind of a peer learning space around this topic. So we started our cohort in early 2024. We've got over 30 participants from cities and counties. Most of our members are, sustainability staff or energy managers, but they've also brought some of their finance teams into the fold, which is important. We do quarterly Zoom meetings, and we'll usually have a presentation, but most of the time is reserved for that peer sharing. Trading notes on, I just always go back to this one Zoom meeting we had where people are like, yeah, it turns out you have to, for paper filing, you've got to send it to this PO box in Utah, and they're like typing it in the chat. Things like this that, obstacles that have come up over the course of the implementation of this new program. There are awesome national resources on this. Lawyers for Good Government, if you haven't heard of them, that's where we always point people. We are not tax experts and do not claim to be. And, people were talking about not duplicating efforts. We don't want to do that. So we are pointing people to national resources that exist, and we are just providing that space for the in-state sharing, trading tips on, we're working with this tax firm. They were really useful. Don't go with this one. They're super expensive. Turns out you can do this one in-house if the EV forms are not that complicated. So that kind of peer sharing is what these state-based networks are like really helpful at providing. What else do I want to say about this? Oh, yes. I know there weren't too many state people in the room, but just wanted to share something that state of Minnesota just set up. They are working with Deloitte to file their own tax forms, basically, state fleets, state, solar on state buildings. They've got a lot of business. And so they're working with Deloitte to file their own forms. And what I really appreciate is that they set aside a piece of that contract for Deloitte to work one-on-one with local governments. And so Minnesota municipalities can take a couple hours of Deloitte expert time to answer their questions about forms and things like that. So thank you. Oh, I'll speed up. So anyways, if you're in a place where you can ask your state to do something like this, really fantastic assistance. Okay, so Atlas Public Policy is a partner of GPI. Maybe you've seen their climate program portal, great tracking of federal funding and now federal funding impacts. They have released this local government direct pay tracker where you can kind of see where these projects are happening across the country. I know it's not complete yet because there are Minnesota projects that are not on there yet, but we've been encouraging folks to fill this out. I think for two reasons. It's helpful to see, it's helpful for communities to see project examples, how much money local governments are saving through this. And then it also helps us demonstrate the value of this of direct pay when we are trying to save it. So local government direct pay tracker, I forgot to put the link on there, but you should be able to Google it. And then wanted to give a shout out to Karis, who has created a Midwest specific tracker and lots of activity in Wisconsin. I know there's been a lot of great projects here. I think there was a mobile workshop that highlighted some direct pay projects. Okay, a couple of nods. So yes, Midwest specific, if you want to take a look at those stories. The other tracker just has local government projects for now, but this one shows nonprofit projects and schools and goes beyond to show all of the tax exempt entities that can use direct pay. Okay, so I'm again so grateful to Alex for setting the stage for the Green Bank conversation. Ours is not exactly a green bank, and I don't understand why, but it is essentially, for all intents and purposes, a green bank. The Minnesota Climate Innovation Finance Authority. We've been helping our local government networks connect with MNCFA so that they can understand the opportunities there, the bridge loan opportunities. The first loan that MNCFA made was a direct pay bridge loan for this awesome project in St. Paul, affordable housing, and many other things. But the loan was for a kind of networked hydrothermal project that will be really fantastic. Okay, and it wouldn't be a Minnesota presentation without a discussion about hockey arenas. And this is where I know just enough to be dangerous. And so maybe I could ask Alex afterwards to provide some more color to this. But essentially, as the state energy financing institution, MNCFA has the ability to kind of bundle projects to present to the DOE loan program office. And I've put a major asterisk because I do not know what the loan programs office will continue to fund, which technologies. So that's a big asterisk. But I bring this up because it's another way that we've used these networks to kind of quickly mobilize and identify projects and present them for financing from DOE. So MNCEFA came to present to our community energy network. They were like, we want to bundle all of these ICE Arena projects because turns out ICE Arenas are super big. What's a nice way to say this? Use a lot of energy. And so they're looking at solar and geothermal and other efficiency projects. And the idea is to kind of bundle all these together. And MNCEFA does not have the infrastructure at this point. They're still staffing up. Doesn't have the infrastructure to do that outreach to identify the project. So worked with CERTs to put together a nice survey to get the information that MNCEFA needed to bring that to the LPO. So uncertain whether we hope those projects move forward, but there's a bit of uncertainty. Okay, I think the takeaways we wanted to share were, I really appreciated the way that you framed this, Alex, that the federal funding was never the end game. Communities have been interested in clean energy projects in the past. They still are interested. There are models and opportunities to fund these projects despite what's happening at the federal level. I mean, this is pretty obvious, and you all are coordinated with entities in your own states, but it's really important, and having these, you know, venues to connect with other TA providers and for local governments and communities to connect with one another can really help us work together and help communities navigate the federal funding and other funding opportunities. And it doesn't have to be like a big fancy, because it is kind of fancy, the TA Collab website and branded and things. It doesn't have to be that. It can be, you know, a quarterly meeting, getting folks together. A Google group has been really helpful for us. Doesn't have to be huge. And there are many examples. I'm seeing the Wisconsin folks, got the IU Environmental Resilience Institute, Michigan's really coordinated, and the Michigan Green Community. So lots of examples across the region. And I know I'm missing some, so apologies. And then take advantage of direct pay this year is the final. So here's our contact info. We only have a few minutes for questions. Did any come through the app? Okay.
Thank you so much to our presenters. If anybody wants to put in a question right now, they can, and I'll try to get it spoken out. The question that we do currently have for I think this was Donna's, does IFF fund churches, parochial schools, or other houses of worship?
We do fund programs that churches have, such as housing, daycare, schools, etc. We do not fund spaces that are used for proselytizing.
Is this on? Okay. That was the only question that is currently in the queue. I'm going to just go over some of the closing notes, but if anybody wants to put in more questions while I'm doing that.
There one out there?
Oh. Oh.
I love running.
Okay, yes, yeah, I understand. Okay, do any of you offer leasing programs for solar or clean energy? Are they all where the I guess the individual ends up owning the panels?
I do not.
Well, it's kind of complicated. I hate to say this because certain states allow it, certain, green banks will get involved in that. And so, and I know the corporations, the developers get involved in that as well. So I think there are options to do that, but you kind of have to drill down a little bit into your particular geography to understand what's allowable and what's not allowable in terms of like third-party ownership rules and that sort of thing.
I know your CERT training is state specific, but might you be willing or interested in sharing your videos, like just the video portion?
It's not state specific right now. The videos are mostly based on the federal stuff because most of the Minnesota programs hadn't really come through. I'm trying to think if there was maybe in the EB one. They're all being redone to be evergreen. They are all on our website. You're welcome to go check them out. Like I said, there were QR codes on all the stuff. I actually have, I didn't think about it prior to, but I always carry in my backpack. So here's a couple of community energy ambassador postcards that have the QR code on them. And then, yeah, so they're open.
I'm Eric from Milwaukee. I asked the question about houses of worship. I'm curious. I get IFF doesn't fund houses of worship, but I'm curious if anybody does. And the reason I think it's important is because, at least in Milwaukee, the houses of worship are our ambassadors in many respects. So we have when we said we want to partner with community-based organizations, and they were like, you got to talk to the houses of worship because they're the, they're in many cases the anchors of our community and things like that. So we have a program to do energy audits and do outreach and all that. But the funding has been very, very difficult. We get people excited about projects and then we can't find funding.
So through the through both Easy and Seal, we have funded projects at churches. That's because our client, IFF's client, was the city. So the funding came from the city to us to the church, but the church was not our client, right? So if there's a sort of third party program like that where, and again, this is just IFF. I'm sure there are CDFIs out there that can fund a church program, but if the church building is part of a program that is doing something like you're talking about, collaborative work and community work, that can be funded. It's just that, like, we have a historic church and we want to repair our stained glass for worship. We can't do that.
Green banks do. So, it's again, we're kind of the wild west of, so turn to your green bank and find out, because I totally agree with you. I mean, when I look around different sectors around the state, and I think, well, houses of worship is a tremendous sector, and they're all communicating with each other, or many of, so, it just creates a momentum. K-12 is another one, affordable housing, et cetera. But I think it's a huge opportunity. And like you say, it's a gap in the market. Like, it's an interesting gap, and that's where green banks can step in and help.
I'll take like probably 2 more questions, and then I'm gonna just do our closing remarks. If you have any more questions for the speaker, we have a coffee break until 11, so feel free to go up and talk to them, or again, connect with them on Hoover.
Hi, Allison from Wisconsin Local Government Climate Coalition. You brought up the table with the different green banks in the Midwest, and you mentioned you are a nonprofit entity, and that's your model. I was wondering if any of those other folks on the list were nonprofit entities, or are they all state governments? Just wondering a little bit more about that.
Well, so Michigan has the oldest nonprofit green bank in the country. They started 17 years ago. And so they were the first nonprofit green bank model. So I know them. I have to go through that list again. So I know Indiana, I know Iowa, I know Michigan are. One of the Illinois ones is a nonprofit, although it was kind of like from state government, they're kind of operating separately as a nonprofit. So it's a little bit of a mix. And I'm certainly, if you want to shoot me a note or whatever, I can tell you specifically which ones are which. And maybe that helps clarify it.
All right, do we have any more questions? I think we have time for one more.
I don't really have a question. Just wanted to lift up Interfaith Power and Light, which is very large in Minnesota. I worked for them for a long time in Ohio, so just reach out to them if you don't know them already.
All righty. Could we get one more little round of applause for our panelists? All right, I want to thank them again and everyone here for being here, being engaged. Again, all this content will be on Hoover for the next 3 months. It'll all be recorded. Please help us take advantage of all of the resources Hoover has, engaging with the speakers, connecting with them on Hoover, LinkedIn. And then our next round of workshops starts at 11. We have a coffee break from now until then. And then there's bathrooms on every floor.